how you've approached this business for the last 10 years. What are some of the things that you have done that have worked? What are some of the mistakes that you've made along the way? And then what are you doing today that you're finding to be very, very helpful in growing your business? So if we just rewind for a minute, obviously you and I have been working together only for 90 days. You've been doing this for 10 years. What would you say has been your approach to lead generation, acquiring new business? What are some of the things you've tried in the past? What does that look like for the last 10 years?
So I'm gonna say this, but it's very wonky because when I first started in real estate, this was about 10 years ago. I knew that I wanted to be a listing agent. That wasn't even a question. I was told by some people in the industry that I respected and said, "Hey, you got to work some listings." So I went straight into working listings. However, I was young and I looked young and I didn't know certain terms that sellers were asking me, and so it was a challenge. So I was always a cold calling. I was always focused on cold calling. So
Hmm.
it's been about 10 years of cold calling. Um, did I have success all the time? Not necessarily, but it was mainly cold calling and open houses.
Got it.
Cold calling open houses were very good for me and my business
Got it.
when I first
And
started. Yeah.
and what type of production, just so the audience has an idea, like what type of production have you been having over the last couple of years? What's that look like?
Yeah, we've been right around like 20 mil a
Yeah.
year. I do have a team as well. So I
Yep.
do run a team, which is that's why I say it's a little wonky because, I would generate leads and then I'll dish them out and, do that. But it's about 20 mil the last couple of years, give or
Yeah.
take. Yeah.
That's great. And we'll kind of break
Yeah.
that down. So, well, actually, yeah. What does your team look like right now?
So I have a team of 14 right now. And I run like a team rich model.
Yeah.
So I have people on the brokerage model, and then I have people on their team. Obviously, that's a little different depending on where you land and what you're looking for in our team. Um, on our team, you do get supplied with some leads, CRM, CSU, a bunch of systems that there's a cost to, so you would have to be part of the team. So I run somewhat of a hybrid kind of
It's
model
great.
there.
It's a
Yeah,
great model. And so are you still in personal production? Or are you teaching your agents now how to become listing agents?
both. I'm in
Yeah, it's great.
production
It's
and
hard.
I'm teaching agent. Yeah, it's tough.
It's really
It's a lot
hard.
of work. It's a lot of work. Especially as you start to teach new agents, they have questions and you don't want to let them down. They trusted you to come join you, which I don't take lightly. And sometimes you have to put your production on hold to go help them.
Yep.
So it's a fine balance. You have to balance that properly for sure.
Oh, it's hard. And I
Yeah.
did it for years and years and years and years, And so what is it that attracted you to want to work with me? Because you've been doing this a long time. You've
Yeah.
probably learned from a lot of different people. You've probably had a lot of coaches. You've been exposed to many, 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 many things. What was it that said, okay, I want to work with Brandon?
So a couple interviews that I've watched from the people that you've coached, and I was like, let me look into their style of business, their production, and I started seeing, oh wow, like they're moving big numbers. And I thought it was insane of the amount of production that some of the people were doing on their own. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, something's, what's going on here? So I got curious. So I started watching your videos. I think you put a video on of I think it was Tim Heil.
Hmm.
And I actually went to Tim Heil's real estate machine training in Austin 6 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, then I'm like, okay, this we're in alignment in what
Yeah.
we want to accomplish. So that's why I was like, okay, let me look into it more. And I started watching your videos, and I'm like, okay, makes sense. I will say this though, I was a little hesitant just because, and now it's
Okay.
it's
Well, yeah, it's
yeah.
great.
I was hesitant because I'm on the West Coast and I didn't really know of anybody really coaching with you. At least I didn't know,
Yeah.
anybody coaching. So I was like, would it work over here? Is it just because it's a, kind of thing? And I mean, sales is sales. It's gonna work, So yeah, I just said, take a leap of faith and let's try the coaching. not try. Let's engage in the coaching. So yeah.
So let's break it down. 90 days of it, what are some things, again, because you're running a successful team, you've been a successful agent, you've been doing this for over a decade, you've been exposed to a lot of different methodologies. What is your first take on some of the things that you're learning? What have you been able to implement that you're finding success with? Like, share that, please.
So one of the biggest things that I took from it was one of your initial classes from school, the school program that you have. And I was like, all right, let me jump on. And you really outlined what the numbers look like.
Mm.
So you did the business plan where it's like, hey, if you want to hit this amount of production, then you need to do this amount of hours. And if you break that into the weekly, then this is how much you need to do daily. It was so clear for me. I'm like, wow, like
Yeah.
that. Like now I have a goal on a daily basis. Like I need to get on the phone for this amount of hours if I want to hit this goal. Those numbers may be less for me because I do have a database, but
Yes.
I just know if I hit those numbers, then I should hit, the number that you're saying. Obviously, you have to practice your scripts and be dialed in on that, but you know, I it was just so clear, and I'm like, okay, it was like if I can just focus on a daily basis, hit these numbers, we should be good. It
Yeah.
was almost like I knew I couldn't not make money.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing how much confidence comes through that clarity planning, because it's kind of like seeing for the first time. It's like, wow, this is so crystal clear that
Yeah.
all the BS and all the vagueness and all the stories we have in our head and all the doubts kind of just subside instantly, and it gives you real sense of confidence. And I think that's kind of what you've experienced.
Yeah.
Makes a ton of sense.
Uh, it's so simple yet so impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. Now, as far as from a skills perspective, right? I don't know what methodologies you've been using, and you've been prospecting for a decade, probably many. What I teach is very different. What I teach is some would say, well, it's pretty. I don't know. Some people have called it very advanced. I don't know to which extent or how deep you're implementing the methodologies yet. And what your experience has been versus what I would call the old way versus the way that I teach. Have you experienced that? Have you started to use any of the language patterns that you've learned, and how is it working?
Yeah. So, I mean, cold call. Here's what I'll say about cold calling too. It's like
Yeah.
you can, and I share this with the team. There are people with less doing more.
Oh, sure.
So, what are they doing though? They're taking more action. So, I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, we're taking the actions, but one thing that I realized is that I kept on hitting walls with certain sellers, trying to be confrontational,
That's right.
trying to push through the appointment. And one thing that I really liked about your script, and I'm still learning them, so I'm still kind of like, learning the scripts, is the permission-based selling is basically what I'm understanding it to be.
Yeah.
Like the line opener, when I'm cold calling now, it's like, and I may not follow the script fully, but I'm following the method.
Sure.
And hey, this is Jerry. I was giving you a call about 123 Main Street. I know this call is a little out of the blue. Just wanted to see if I can ask you a quick question. You think that might be okay? Sure. That's
The
gone.
magic.
That's gotten my engagement. It's getting me better engagement. So
Versus, let's just
yeah,
stay there for a second, right? Because I think that the audience might hear that, or even someone who's been doing this as long as you might hear that and say, okay, that doesn't seem, it's massively different. Because
yeah,
the way you were probably taught was similar to how I was taught, which is to essentially bulldoze your way into a conversation. And people get really nervous when I tell them, listen, stop trying to force your way, because the untrained salesperson says, well, no, I have to be in control, which means I have to be talking. And if I'm not talking, then I'm worried I'm going to lose control. So when you say get the person's permission, to the untrained ear, Jerry, they get nervous. But then what you've learned is by giving more autonomy, compliance for agreement goes up. And so the first time you started to do that, were you a little bit nervous of trying it? And then after you're doing it, did you say to yourself, I can't believe how powerful it is to give another human being the perception that they are in control.
Giving up control was hard.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something that I had to adjust to, and I'll also say this is that it didn't happen like overnight. Like I had to practice it. Oh dang, oh my tone was off. Oh, I asked the question a little shaky, or so yeah. Giving up control to get control was actually one of my ahas. I'm like, okay, this is good. I like it. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that I think separates your program from most is that it, it's very it seems passive, but it's not.
No, and
I
that's
guess
just
it's
a
the only way. Yeah.
go ahead. I mean, because you're exactly right. That feeling you have is how most people uh, misunderstand what's happening. And they think, well, I'm not going to get as many of appointments because it's passive. It's actually the exact opposite of what's happening.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if we break down your business, you guys are, what lead sources are you guys working as a team? What do you work as an individual producer? What does your lead generation look like at your group?
So as a team, like I would generate leads through Google PPC for the buy side,
Got it.
Facebook leads, Google PPC, open houses. I encourage the team to do open houses. Um, as of late, I started jumping on the phones, and what do you know? The team starts jumping on the phones, and then they're like, "Oh, this Mojo thing, or whatever system people use, it's this thing works." So right now, as of late, I've been calling from my Mojo dialer, um, and I just get leads from there through the neighborhood search
Going
expireds.
direct to the homeowner, right? You're not, what you're talking about is different than buying a lead or doing an open house. You're just calling direct to homeowner.
Correct, direct to
Got it.
homeowner.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of the sources that we call are, you know, we can pull up 50% equity or more,
Yeah.
certain age or two-story homes, and they've owned the property for 20 years. We know people with two-story homes, and they're getting older. They're like, it's too big of a house, so they're gonna have to downsize, or um, they're so that's what also right now what's been working is interesting is it's like NODs are coming up a little bit more, so
Yeah.
that I still haven't had too much success, but I'm getting some engagement.
Yeah.
They're a little brutal. They're a little bothered and upset, but yeah, those are the lead sources. Absentee owners are great,
Yep.
great. So
Yeah. So that's
yeah,
great. And I love those lead sources because, I mean, what you didn't say is what most people say, which is like FISBOs and expireds, but there's a world outside of those that is really good when it comes to outbound lead generation, like downsizers, like absentee owners, like just circle prospecting, equity owners, because you don't have to deal with the competition and find yourself having really good conversations with great seller leads. And that's what you're
yeah,
finding.
yeah. I have to admit though, I for sell by owners, I have like I've worked them, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's a
Most
different.
veteran agents do. Most veteran agents have a problem with for sale by owners. Hopefully, we can fix that because I love for sale by owners. It's my belief that they're the easiest lead to convert. But you and I will work on that offline.
I feel like they're the hardest, but I guess I need to change
Yeah,
my mindset around it. But yeah,
yeah. Um,
um,
so when you're working these sources, how much of the business right now in your team is coming from direct outbound versus the Google PPC versus referrals versus open house? If you had to source your business, you guys do 20 million again this year. How would you source that?
well, this year we have so far we've closed like 45 sales this year. We're probably going to trend 80 to 100.
Sure.
Um, Most of it has come from PPC right now, but that's because
Yeah.
I didn't jump into cold calling until November again, like
Yep.
of last year. So I know that there's a little bit of a waiting period. But
Yep.
right now I have like I've closed a commercial building for like 1.8 from cold call. That wasn't expired. What's interesting about that one is I actually cold called the guy on his home,
Mm.
and then I said, "No, I'm not looking to sell this property." And I said, "Okay. Do you happen to have any other properties you might consider selling?" He's like, "Actually, I do. Can you check out this one over here?" And we went to go do that one. We sold it. Um, and then I've taken I have a listing on the market that was a cold call right now. Um, two listings I took, actually four listings I took last week, from cold calls. The lady's like, "How do we meet again?"
Yeah.
Like it was a cold call.
I mean, so
So
you're building up that pipeline, and
yeah,
so but historically, I'm a huge fan of PPC, right? Especially on the Google side, more so than Facebook. So you guys do a lot of business through there. Let's break that down just for a second, and then we'll come back to direct outbound.
sure.
Because PPC is it's outbound prospecting. You're just investing some money up front so that you just get better, higher quality data, right? So versus just cold calling, you can get better data. It's still a direct outbound call. They're not calling you, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not calling
So
you. They still don't know who you are.
yeah,
It's still pretty cold.
yes,
There's a cost per lead.
that's right. So
There's
let's
yeah,
break that down for the audience so they understand it. So
sure.
what platform do you use? What company do you use to do that?
I use Ylopo.
Yeah. All right. So you're using Ylopo. So they're managing your PPC campaigns for you on your behalf. They charge a management fee, et cetera, et cetera. What does your cost per lead look like right now in your market? It's probably pretty expensive, I would imagine.
For a buyer lead, it's between $25 to $30,
All
depending
right.
on the day or the month. And
Got
then,
it.
but that doesn't include the management fee, so we have
Right.
to blend that in there. Um, but right now, just standalone, it's about 30. Let's just call it $30 a lead.
Got it. Are you guys
Um,
doing any seller PPC or is it just all on the buy side right now?
we're gonna start doing some seller PPC. I just wanted to make sure we're
Profitable.
skilled. Yeah.
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 And then the other part for people that with that type of lead generation, have you guys tracked your conversion timeline? Because you've been doing it a long time, right? So you can put people into the system and get closings, but a lot of people think, well, I'll just invest in Google PPC and I'll start getting closings the first month. In our experience, it's taken 6, 9, 12 months to build a pipeline before you start getting closings. Has that been your same experience?
Yeah, it's been between 6 to 9 months for
That's
one
right.
to turn. But the other thing that people, and I'm not saying not everybody understands, but you have to spend money for 9 months
That's
to
right.
get that one deal. So it's like, let's say you spend $1,000, a month, then that's $9,000 into it before you make 15 grand. So you're really making, whatever it is. And then if you have a team and you're going to split it, then, you're probably not profitable for the first year
That's
on
right.
those leads. It starts to turn a little more year 2 and 3.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, you still have to make the investment for a couple months. And I say you should try it for 6 months before you even look at anything else,
Yep.
because
And
otherwise
I
it's
say
going to
the
get way
same
too much.
thing. 6 to 12 months, and then not just the investment, but you actually got to make the calls. And so a lot of people that do it are trying to avoid making the calls. So that'll be a whole nother podcast. But
Yeah.
now when you're learning this direct outbound, is it part of your vision for your team and your company that you're training agents on doing the work that we're talking about so they can just all get on the phones, go direct to homeowner, becomes a lot more profitable, becomes a lot more scalable, right? That's the other reason. It's like, well, I don't have to worry about all of these keywords and competing on keywords, et cetera, et cetera. I can just have a team of 14, 15, 20, 30, 60 agents all on a platform going direct to homeowner. We can scale our business a lot faster. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yes. I'm thinking that it's a lot more scalable. It's also a value add for agents to learn the seller side.
Big time.
So, if you can go take listings and you can share with an agent, hey, I can show you how to take listings, follow my lead, then they're more than likely to come work with you. So it's also a value add.
Big
Um,
time.
people on my team, they have kids, and showing home Saturdays and Sundays, it's tough. You have to miss baseball games, soccer games, whatever the case may be. And I've mentioned this to them, like when I started taking listings, I stopped working. I mean, I still work on the weekends, but by choice. It's not like, oh, the client calls you, hey, I need to see this house right now. And I'm at dinner with my wife. I'm like, hey, I've been there.
Oh
I've
yeah,
actually
me too.
and I've also showed clients homes in Victorville and Palmdales and Riverside, and that's like an hour and a half away from where I'm at. Um, when you work with sellers, you can pick the area you want to work in. So now I'm chasing a certain radius, and if it's 5 minutes from my house, it's going to take me, you know, 30 minutes to prepare for the appointment. I can go right away and come back, quickly.
That's right.
Um, so yeah, I think that the vision of our team right now is to have people work on the seller side. The other thing is that on the sell side is that not only do you control your time, but you also generate leads.
That's right.
from the listings. Especially going into this new market. I don't know, right now it's kind of all up in the air, but you're going to have people call you and say, hey, I want to buy that house. So what are they going to use? Probably the listing agent. I still don't know it, speculating, but I'm
I agree
assuming,
with you though.
yeah. Hmm.
Yep, I agree with you. I think that we've always talked about the listing agents controlling the market. It might become even more so in this new market when the NAR stuff all goes into effect in August. Because you're
Yeah.
right. I think there'll be more consumers that like new construction. You control the inventory. They're going to the person who controls that inventory. And if they have a home to sell, you might find yourself getting a lot more listings because you have listings. So no, I
Yeah.
totally agree. Let's switch and talk about the appointment. I don't know, there's I believe it's the most important part of what a real estate agent does is how they show up at a listing appointment, because I don't think it matters necessarily how a real estate agent finds themselves on a listing appointment, whether they're doing Google PPC, they're cold calling, door knocking, referrals, it doesn't matter, right? But what
Yeah.
does matter is how you show up on that appointment. And so what have you been doing? Well, better yet, what have you changed as a result of what we've been doing for the last 90 days, if anything, that you find the most beneficial when you go and interview to list someone's home?
Uh, that's an interesting question because a lot of the listings I'm taking right now, some of them are absentee, so it's not like I have a formal appointment with them.
Right?
I do
That's a
have,
good point.
so I do have Zoom calls. Hey, this is what our plan. I've sold homes for people. I've never seen their faces.
It's the
Like,
best.
like I've never seen. It's all a phone call. They're like, I can't believe I just sold my home with you, and I never seen you, never met
Yep.
you, anything. So I've sold a client. I sold a from a cold call. I sold a client's home, and he's from the UK. We had to send a notary to the consulate
Yeah.
and all that stuff. But um, it, yeah, so that's on that side. Now, if I'm meeting with the seller that's like nearby, and I'm doing a formal presentation, one of the things that I've changed in my approach is that I actually, and I've always done this, but I'm doing it now. It's kind of come back to like, okay, this is important. You were doing a video about knowing what's going on in the neighborhood. So you start like, hey, previewing properties in the neighborhood, knowing what's going on. I actually was meeting with the seller. I'm like, hey, he's like, have you seen that house on Premiere? I'm like, oh, the one that John owns over there? He's like, you know John? I'm like, yeah, I know John. John, the guy with the dog? He's like, yeah, okay. So I got a little
Huge.
deeper. Yeah, I've gotten deeper into um, getting familiar with the neighborhoods that I want to work in, so that when I go to the appointment, I'm confident. Like, oh, you've been to this pizza place? It's amazing. It's great. So I'm adding more of a personalized approach to it. And one of the things, like we're implementing the listing present. Like I'm like, a matter of fact, I have it right here,
Yeah.
the listing presentation. So I'm like, okay, I need to start saying this. Setting the agenda for me, I know why I was losing listings in the
Mm.
past. I wasn't preparing the seller for what was about to happen. And then I'm wondering why I didn't get the listing in the end. I would go home and I'd tell my wife, they don't like me, what's going on? Did I say something? And it's like, well, there was no flow to my presentation. A lot
Yep.
of times I would take listings just because I've been in contact for so long and they trusted me for building a relationship. But those that were on the fence, interviewing other agents, it was tough because I didn't, there was no process to my presentation. I had one in place and then I went away from it because I thought I was, I don't need a presentation. But then I'm like, okay, every time I don't do a presentation, I feel like problems come up.
Yep.
Oh, I forgot to mention this. Oh, I forgot to say this. Oh, I forgot. Let's just go through the process. So having a more process approach is definitely important. Not only are we doing the listing presentation and we're talking with the team, we're actually saying, okay, how can we use this format with the listing presentation on the buyer presentation? So
Yep.
hey, this is the purpose of our meeting is to find out, what you qualify for, find out what the numbers look like, and at the end you decide, it's the same thing just in the buyer side.
That's
So
right.
having a process is what's helping me um, feel more confident at the appointment for sure.
Smart. Yeah, and I think a lot of
Yeah.
agents they beat around the bush and they put it on the prospect to figure out what we're doing here. And
Hmm.
what we're doing here is to figure out whether or not working together is a good fit. And we
Yeah.
communicate that up front. And the prospect's just like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. Where most agents are just hiding behind that fact. And then they don't get the business and they're kind of like, well, why didn't I get the business? Well, you weren't
Yeah.
clear with your intentions and the prospect doesn't feel comfortable with that. And so I think that's a really good point.
And I'll say this too, Brandon. I've been on so many appointments. Um, well, I mean, so many, but I've been on quite a
Sure.
bit of appointments where the seller says, "I'm going to work with you. You're my guy. We're gonna do, we're gonna list our home when we're ready. We're gonna list it with you." And then they don't.
Yeah.
And I was already somewhat seasoned. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Is this industry for me? Am I gonna have to deal with this with every client? And it was really, I wasn't setting the intention,
That's right.
right? Hey, when we come over, if I give you this advice, I'm just letting you know that, you know, I'm gonna be your agent and we should get something in writing.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but that's when I kind of made a decision. Okay, I got to do something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Listing agents are leaders, and we have to show up as the leader because that's what homeowners are looking for. They're
Mhm.
looking for leadership. And so if agents show up at a presentation as a follower from a mindset perspective, it's going to be very difficult for them to win clients because the clients are looking to be led. And so I don't know if you and I have ever talked about that, but that's what they're looking for. The same way agents are looking for leadership with inside of their brokerages and their teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, so you find yourself in this situation all the time, which is as agents come into this business and they're brand new licensees and they're coming to you anyways, what advice are you giving brand new agents, A, that work for you, or B, in general, that might listen to this podcast that maybe you wish someone told you when you first started in this business?
the so especially where I'm at in Los Angeles, there's so many TV shows, there's so many celebrity realtors. I've gotten appointments where I'm like, hey, I met with Tarek Al Musa.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, or with some other people that might be on TV or whatnot. It's not like that, by the way. This business, you have to put an intention to lead generate, and that doesn't mean that if you don't want to cold call, don't cold call, but you have to lead generate. Either generate leads, you pay for them, you either you do open houses or you cold call. Like cold, it's not the only avenue, but I do know that it's one of the faster ways to get business.
That's right.
So you definitely have to prospect, and you have to make an intention to prospect. And on top of prospecting, you still have to set aside the time to, manage your business, but that can't take time away from you prospecting. Not to mention follow up, but the main thing is prospecting. It has to get done.
Yeah. What would you?
I just don't understand how some agents would go all week and it's like, oh, how many contacts you make? Oh, two,
I know.
two. Yeah.
That's my biggest frustration as a sales performance coach. That's my job, right? Your job is to
Mhm.
lead salespeople. We kind of have the same job, you and I. It's
Mhm.
so frustrating to have somebody who you and I know, it's like, well, the only way you're going to make it in this business and you're going to actually make some good money is you have to prospect. That is the business you're in. And then have them say, nah, I don't know if I buy into that, Jerry. I think that I can just take more of a passive approach. I'm going to do social media and I'm going to wait for business to find me. What do you say to those agents?
I think that, well, no, I mean, you have to be proactively prospecting. You could do social media. I actually was pretty busy on social media. I actually stopped it a little bit just because it distracts me from the stuff that I need to get done. Social media is not a bad avenue. It's
Right.
it's a great avenue.
So the thing with social media is, I think a lot of people who do social media, they front the production or they're trying to front, and the client will find out right away once they meet with you or have a conversation.
They're trying to look successful, is what you're saying. They're trying to put on a front, is what you're saying, on social media to portray themselves as a successful real estate agent where maybe they are not, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
totally agree.
and that's I'm gonna unblur the background. I feel like I look a little funny there, but
There you go. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. That's great.
So I think that a lot of them, will, and that's okay. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Sure.
But once people come through your pipeline and then you start going through the process and then, convert, that's why you see a lot of people who do social media, they have to hit big numbers. like big views or you
Right.
know, it's a lot of views in order to generate a couple clients. So yeah, I think that it's okay. If you want to do social media, but have a strategy for it.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the strategy?
Totally agree. And the problem is it's just like that passive mindset of like, yeah, I can just post here and there and I can make a couple TikTok videos and then have the audacity to say, well, why don't I not have a lot of clients? It's because you're not following a process. You don't have a system. I think people underestimate, in my experience of being in this industry for 20 years, people vastly underestimate the amount of effort it takes just to be average, let alone be good, let alone be elite. We're talking about just making it in this business. They vastly underestimate how much effort they need to put forth.
And to that point, if people were to just treat it like a job, like
Right.
like not even an overtime job,
Normal job.
just a part-time 5 hours a day job,
Yeah.
you do well.
You do really well. You and I are totally on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say this though, those that are having a hard time getting traction or whatnot, they probably don't have a wife.
Yeah.
The best life coach and accountability is, I mean, you know, I saw one of the posts from someone on school, and they were saying, should I go full time? Should I do this? I'm like, look, man, it you have to go full time.
You have to. I told him the same thing.
You have to go full time. There's no part time, and it's tough. It's really tough. And when your back's against the wall, you will figure it out. Either you
That's
figure
right.
it out or you realize it's not for you.
Oh, so just totally agree.
Yeah.
And you can't come to that realization unless you do go full time and your back is against the wall, because you're living in this world of the unknown. When you're keeping the part-time job and you're staying part-time in real estate, you never get to find out. And that causes more pain than just go all in. Either one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to succeed, which is what you want, or you're going to find out it ain't for you.
Yeah.
Either way, you know.
Yeah. 100%. So you have part-time agents. There's some that do okay, but it's secondary income. If you want to make full-time income, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, Jerry, I appreciate it. This has been great. I mean, I think, I guess last one for me, you're when you're bringing on agents into the team, have you changed your approach to getting that person in production as soon as possible? Or I guess if you've changed, what have you changed to get somebody productive as quickly as possible?
So the number one, so when I bring someone onto the team, and I kind of put a little bit of a hold to it, just, we can bring some more people on. One thing I've changed is, well, first and foremost, I need to go produce. If I produce, then I can make it rain.
Sure.
There's some opportunities here. I think I'll say this. Can I modify that a little bit?
Please.
I think a lot of people want to start a team, because I did this without production.
100%. That's the truth.
And when they do that, the hardest thing about that is that the people that come on board your team, they'll follow you for a little bit, but then they're like, oh, well, there's really no opportunity here. So then they start to tinker in other places or whatnot. But if you produce and hey, this is a proven model, I'm doing it, and there's opportunities, then people are more likely to stay a little longer or participate in the team. I think that some people want to start teams, and again, I did this too. I started a team early on, year one. I had a pretty strong year. I probably made 100K my first year.
Sure.
Grinding it out, open houses, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to start a team. and then 3 years later, I burned it all down. I'm like, I'm going to go individual for a little bit, and then I started doing it again. I have the bug, but now I'm like, okay, I've learned systems. I have a follow-up system. I have certain things in place. I have an assistant. I have marketing in place, Y locals, all these things that cost money. I can support you now.
That's right.
Through the team.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's this leadership fallacy of show versus tell. It only works for a little while. That if you're going to try to tell agents what to do and not do it yourself, it works for a short time, and then turnover starts to happen. And I see it all the time with these agents in the business. To your point, they're in a business for a year. They have a little bit of success and they say, okay, now I'm going to go build this big team. and it falls apart because it's not built on a foundation of production.
Yeah.
They do it so that they don't have to be in production. They do it for the wrong reason, and so it never works. Never works.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you jumping.
And profit margins are lower.
Oh, they're super. They're nothing. You make so much more money just producing by yourself, you know?
Yeah.
So people start these teams for their ego and then, you know, all the wrong reasons. So anyway, listen, I really enjoyed our conversation, truly. I mean, I like talking to people that have been in the business for a long time because you have a different perspective, right? You have perspective that the brand new agent just doesn't have. So I appreciate you jumping on today.